writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Laura, one of Kobo Writing Life's author engagement managers.
And I'm Rachel, Kobo Writing Life's other author engagement manager.
On today's episode, we spoke to Damon, who is the creator and CEO of BookFunnel, an ebook and audiobook delivery service for authors and publishers. As a lifelong software engineer, Damon is an expert in just about everything technical and can offer unique insight on publishing as it relates to software and technology. He's also the self-published author of his very own fantasy trilogy and continues to spin stories in his head that he hopes to someday get around to writing.
During our conversation, Damon told us all about BookFunnel and how this delivery service started as a solution to one very specific problem and evolved into a staple for many indie authors. He told us about some not so well-known features on BookFunnel and how authors can utilize them. We chatted about the evolution of indie publishing, and Damon gave us his predictions on where indie publishing will be going next. And because Damon and I are both huge Swifties, we chatted about what indie authors can learn from the biggest name in music. Damon is full of great insights and wonderful advice, and I hope you enjoy this episode. All right, we are joined today by Damon from BookFunnel. Damon, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so excited to be here. It's been a while.
It's been a minute, and
Right.
I always love chatting with you. So I know we are about to have a lot of fun, and I'll do my best to keep us on topic. But I feel like Laura will be the one holding the reins here.
And there is almost no chance we're going to stay on topic here.
Absolutely not. And I can guarantee you I have one question planned that will take us way off topic, and I can't wait to chat about it. But before we get into all of that, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Damon Courtney. I am the creator. I am most known as the creator of BookFunnel. I created BookFunnel initially because I was a self-published author of fantasy, capital F, with Wizards and Dragons. And I had self-published my own fantasy trilogy, and I really needed what BookFunnel did, and it didn't really exist. This was I published my first book in 2011, so I'm very old in the self-publishing industry. I published the final book of my trilogy in 2014, and that's really when I started working on BookFunnel. And as much as I enjoyed the writing, I really haven't gotten back to it since. I keep a file of all these great ideas that I have that I hope to get back to someday. But these days, I spend almost all of my time writing BookFunnel.
And can you tell us a little bit about BookFunnel for listeners who might not be familiar with what it is?
Sure. So I started BookFunnel because I had started a newsletter, and I had the advice at the time, if you were listening to Joanna Penn, who is still out there going, cranking out podcast episodes, and she's fantastic. I was listening to all the big authors of the time, and they were all sort of teaching the same things, which is like you should be building a newsletter or a mailing list and getting readers on it so that you can talk to them directly. And, in order to get them on there, you should offer them like a freebie, which we now call a reader magnet. So a short story, a novella, something that just says, hey, thanks for joining my list. I thought, okay, that's cool. I can do that. So I went off to write a 2,000 word short story and ended up with a 25,000 word novella because I write fantasy, and that's how we work. And when I was done, I was like, okay, cool. I've got this thing, and I'm going to give it to people. How do I give it to people? And that really didn't exist. Like, people would just email PDF files and Mobies and all kinds of stuff. And it was really kind of crappy. And it was super hard for readers, not for techie readers. And so, I was a pretty techie person. And so being able to get it onto my iPhone was not going to be an issue for me. But for other people, I thought that's not going to be very easy for them. And so I set out to try and see if I could solve that problem. And as it turned out, it wasn't that hard if you had all of the pieces. And so at the time, I quite literally bought every device I could get my hand on, every Kindle, every Kobo, every Nook, every, iPhones, iPads, Androids, everything. And I just sat down for months and months with a legal pad and just wrote down notes on how do I get a book to this device? And then ultimately was able to turn that into software because that's what I do. It's what I've done for my whole life. I'm a software engineer by trade. And so BookFunnel really exists to deliver ebooks, now audiobooks, we added that years ago. Ebooks and audiobooks outside of all of the store systems. And so, if you had something like a reader magnet that you wanted to make exclusive, so you only get this little short story if you download it by joining my mailing list, because of course we're trying to entice people to get onto our list, then, BookFunnel is platform agnostic. Whatever device they have in their hands, whether it be a Kobo or an iPhone or an Android, we're going to help the reader get that to their device, whether it's ebook, audiobook, whatever, right? So that was why I built BookFunnel initially. Now we do all kinds. I mean, we've been around for 10 years now, so we've built a lot of other features in between, but that's still the core of what we do every single day, is deliver hundreds of thousands of ebooks and now audiobooks to readers.
Do you still have to stay on top of every piece of technology that comes out in order to make sure you can continue to deliver, or has like the e-reader, iPhone, Android technology kind of plateaued?
Do we have to? No. Do we? Yes. Because that's really important to me. Every time, I mean, even, Kobo puts out new devices every year, and we buy every single new device that comes out to make sure that so, I mean, it can be the tiniest little thing, right? So we have a saying at BookFunnel: readers don't read, but also sometimes they really do, and then they're super pedantic. And so, like on a Kobo reader, you say, "Oh, settings, web browser," and then we'll, and our instructions will say, "Oh, in order to download this book directly to your Kobo, tap, settings, go to web browser, and then type in this little code," and they'll go, "Nope, there's no web browser." You go, "No," and they pick it up and they say, "Which Kobo do you have?" "Oh, I have the new Clara." And that's like, "No, it says internal web browser. Is that the one you want me to?" "Yes, that was the one I wanted you to tap on." And so we really do buy every single device. Every new version of Android changes, breaks something. iOS tends to be a little less. They're a bit more, easier with the backwards compatibility. But yeah, we really do buy every device that comes out, including devices that, that our readers have that you may have never seen. We have Tolinos, we have Kindles that were only designed to read manga in Japan. Like and I have to go find them on eBay. Like, you can't buy a Tolino in America. I had to go on eBay and buy it out of Germany and have it shipped here. But I wanted to make sure that when we've seen a lot more German readers in the last few years, and they have Tolinos. That's the largest retailer in Germany. And we wanted to make sure that our process worked, and that when somebody came to our queue, we said, "Oh yeah, no problem. We work with Tolinos. We can support that." So yeah, we still keep up with everything that comes out. And it is not without its pains, right? If you could only see my desk, it's absolutely ridiculous. I have, at least 24 phones, tablets, and various devices sitting on my desk right now, because that's a lot of what we do all the time.
But I think that hands-on dedication that you have with BookFunnel is one of the reasons that authors love working with you so much. And I know from the start, you've always been kind of like you said, the software mind behind BookFunnel. Also, I know at one point you were doing all the customer care yourself. What does your team look like now?
We're up to 10 now. So honestly, we have 3 full-time reader support. So BookFunnel supports 2 levels of customer, right? So the authors are our customers. They're the ones that come to us. And so we have an author support team who deals directly with them. And that can be anything. They're having trouble uploading a file. They're not sure how something works. Those are our authors coming to us directly. But we also support our authors' readers. Now, readers don't pay us. We are paid by authors. We're a very simple software as a service transaction. But we do have to support all of their readers. Now, the readers, we get a lot more email from, but their emails tend to be pretty standard, right? If you have a Kindle, there's probably one of 10 things that is going wrong, a reason why your book didn't make it to your Kindle. And we know what those things are, and it's probably going to be one of those 10s. With authors, who knows? And so our team is now up to 10. Like I said, we have 3 full-time author support, 3 full-time reader support. And in the beginning, I really was answering every single email from authors, readers, everything. My wife joined the company about 6 months in because I couldn't handle the email load anymore. Somebody had, it was either I was going to make new features or I was going to answer emails. I couldn't do both. And so she jumped in and started answering all the emails. And yeah, for the first couple of years, it really was Julie and I answering every email that came through the system and doing all of it. Now I don't answer. I'm lucky if I answer my own emails these days. But yeah, it's we have an amazing team. We actually went to the Author Nation conference. I know I saw Rachel there. We went to Author Nation this year, and we took the whole team, right? So we had a booth, and we took the whole team with us this year, which we'd never done before. In years past, there we had so much traffic coming through that we really couldn't handle it. We couldn't answer everybody's questions, and we really hate when somebody had to walk away without getting an answer. So we decided we'd take the whole team this year, which was kind of cool because there were several members of our team we'd never met, right? We're an all remote company. I'm at the BookFunnel headquarters, which is really just my office. And there were several members that we hadn't met, and many that had not met each other. We have a team meeting every week, but yeah, we hadn't met each other. So that was really cool because we actually got to spend time together. And of course, we'd hired them, so we knew that they were amazing, and they'd been with us for years at that point. We know that they're amazing at what they do. But it's kind of cool when you do get together and you go, hey, these are really cool people that we've hired. This is actually a really great crew, and they're fun to hang out with, and they're funny, and we just had a great time.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, it's always nice to see the full team at conferences and everything. That's awesome. Where would you recommend a new indie author start for their first time using BookFunnel?
So if you were, there's sort of two levels, right? If you're really just starting out as a true indie, like you've just maybe published your first book, then the most likely features that you're going to use BookFunnel for would be things like promotions. So we have this great feature called Group Promos that allows you to find other authors in your genre and then work with them to get your books in front of other readers of your genre, right? If you write space opera and I write space opera and there are 30 people and we all write space opera, then we can all send to all of our lists, to all of our mailing lists, even if we don't have one. Some of us are just starting out and don't have a list. That's okay. You have a space opera and my readers are looking for space opera. So, hooray, we can get your book in front of my readers. And there is there's a general vibe in the indie publishing community. Now, in traditional publishing, I don't think that. I know that I have friends in traditional publishing, and there always was a sort of camaraderie, but there always was sort of a competition too. Like traditional publishing was only going to buy so many contracts, and if they bought yours, then they may not buy mine because they're only going to buy so many in a year. Indie publishing doesn't really work that way. If I publish a book and Laura and Rachel, if we all publish a book and we all write space opera, guess what? It doesn't matter. The readers are out there, and there's nobody out there is reading one book and then it's just well, I guess that's my book for the year. Sorry, Rachel, maybe next year. They don't do that. If I'm a reader, when I finish a book, I immediately look for the next book to read. And so there's a different vibe in the indie author community. And so that says, hey, look, them reading my book doesn't take away from yours, and reading your book doesn't take away from my readership. So let's all see if we can find some readers together. If you were just starting off, those are the most likely features. Group promos, where you're actually joining in larger promos with a group of authors in your genre. And then author swaps, where you're actually reaching out individually to authors and saying, hey, you write space opera, I write space opera, I'll share your book with my list if you'll share my book with your list. And maybe we'll each find some new readers that have never read our stuff before. So that would be the first place as a truly, if you're really just starting out and you've only got one or two books published, even if you don't have your first book published. I would generally recommend, if you haven't published the first book, I always say, if you come watch it in my talks at a conference, the first thing I tell you is finish your book and publish your book, and then move on to the rest of the stuff. I am a grade A procrastinator and can absolutely find any excuse to not finish the thing that I'm supposed to be finishing. But yeah, you really should get your book out there first, at least have that book out there. If you've got multiple books out and you're new to BookFunnel, right? So you just haven't used our service before. We do all kinds of things. We have a feature called Certified Mail, which is for sending out advanced review copies, and then tracking readers and where those copies go. We have, of course, again, if you've never used BookFunnel, then our group promos and author swaps are a fantastic way to find new readers. Because even every author in the world, even the biggest authors in the world are I could use some new readers, right? Nobody's ever nah, I'm good. I got enough. I think I'll just stop here. So those features are always useful. We have a really cool feature. It's small, but if you do, we built it for in-person sales. It's called Print Codes, and it lets you print out individual unique codes and put them onto postcards, business cards, little placards, whatever you want to do. And then when you're either just out and in person, or you're at a conference where you're in person, you can hand out free digital copies of your ebooks or your audiobooks, or you can sell them, right? So I can sell what we found. The reason we built that was because authors would go to these conferences, they would take all their big paperback books, and that's great. A lot of people are looking for that stuff. But then they would also find people that come by their booth and go, oh, your series looks really good, but I really only do audiobooks. And at that point, your only answer was, oh, well, my books are on Audible. Maybe when they get home, they'll remember to go check you out. And now what we see, because we were at the Rave event and Author Nation, and we've done a few other reader conferences where we just kind of walk the floor. And what we see now is like, oh, I only do audiobooks. Oh, great. I can sell you the entire audiobook series right here. And they've got a little card and it's got codes on it, and they can go and download those. And that uses a feature we call print codes. And each code is good for one download. Once the reader has that book, then that code is dead and it can't be used anywhere. So that's a cool thing, that if you are out there doing in-person sales, and I wouldn't recommend it if you've got like 1 or 2 books, but if you already have a backlist and you are doing things like that, being able to take ebooks and audiobooks with you when you are out in a physical space is really kind of a cool thing to do. We have loads and loads of other features that we do. As a beginning author, though, that would be most of the features that you're going to kind of poke around and start out with.
And you literally just segued into my next question, which is BookFunnel has so many features. Do you think there's one that users just aren't very familiar with, or is kind of like a really poorly kept secret?
There are 2 that kind of combine, that kind of work together, right? So anything that you do on BookFunnel ultimately starts with just a link that you're going to give to a reader, so that they can get to the thing that you're trying to give them. So if you use a print code, the print code is going to send them to a page where then it says, oh, okay, here's how you can get your copy of your book, ebook, audiobook, whatever that may be, right? So 2 of the features that I think are like criminally underused. One is super simple. It's called custom domains. And what it means is, when you give a link to somebody, we have a couple of different domains that we use, but most people will go to dl.bookfunnel.com/something. And that's the page that you use. But with custom domains, you can point a piece of your domain that you own. So I have damonjcourtney.com. Don't go there. I haven't touched it in a decade. But that's where when I was writing, that's where I would put my books up and talk about things on my blog. And so I can take a domain, I can take a subdomain like books.damonjcourtney.com. I can point it at BookFunnel, and now all of my pages, everything I have on BookFunnel, reads from my domain. So when I'm on Facebook, rather than sharing a bookfunnel.com link, I'm sharing a damonjcourtney.com link. Now, it's still powered by BookFunnel. So our servers are still answering their requests. Everything works the same, but you own that link. And what I love about that as a techie person is, if you're out there putting out ebooks into the world, you're publishing your books on various platforms, and they get to the end of the book and it says, hey, sign up for my mailing list and get my free short story. And that link goes to books.damonjcourtney.com/free offer. I own that link. And if I later decide that I don't like BookFunnel, you don't want to do that. But if you decided later that you wanted to leave BookFunnel, I own that link. And so I can take that link and I can point it somewhere else. I can go to another service. I can create my own website and I can point my free offer somewhere else. If you use a BookFunnel link, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. If you decided later to leave BookFunnel, that link won't go anywhere. And while, it's super easy in indie publishing to be able to upload your books, to upload changes to your books, you can absolutely change your back matter and upload new copies and stuff like that. It's fine. But if a reader already has an older version of that book, they, in a lot of cases, will not get the newest version. So even after you update and you change that back matter, that's not necessarily the copy that the reader is going to download. And so if they go back and they're getting that old version that has a BookFunnel link in it, and you're no longer using our service, they're going to tap that link and it's not going to go anywhere. So by using a custom domain, number one, it's building your brand. I always say we're not in the business of building our brand. We're in the business of building your brand. So having a link that goes to your domain automatically puts readers and goes, oh, that's going to damonjcourtney.com. That's the website where I can find stuff. The other feature that kind of leads into that's sort of an advanced level feature that goes along with custom domains is custom themes. So you can theme all of your landing pages on BookFunnel. You can change colors. You can even change we even let you change the logos. You can remove all of BookFunnel's logos and put your own in, and nothing on the page even looks like BookFunnel. So you can change all of that. You can upload your book covers, change all the text, change the colors in your text, all this sort of stuff, right? And what I love about that is that you can actually go through and create a whole theme and apply it to your pen name on BookFunnel and say, oh, this is my Damon J. Courtney theme. And BookFunnel will automatically apply that to all of your pages that for that author. And any new pages that you create automatically get that theme applied. So then later you decide, oh, Damon J. Courtney doesn't write fantasy anymore. He writes science fiction. So I want to do like cool stars and black galaxies and stuff. I can go change that theme and boom, immediately it ripples across BookFunnel, and all of your landing pages that are under that pen name now have this new theme associated with them. So you can create multiple pen names on BookFunnel, and every pen name sort of has its own branding and its own theme to it. We do have authors, obviously, that use those features, but those are the ones that they're really sort of advanced. You don't have to use them. The defaults on BookFunnel, if you just go and say, I want to create a landing page and just leave everything as the default, they're going to look great. They're great looking pages. We've tested the heck out of them to make sure that they convert with readers and that readers are going to get their books and all of that stuff is going to work. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you could start getting into things like, oh, the custom domain means that all of my links are mine. They look like my links. They don't look like BookFunnel links. And then once they land on that page, I've created this cool theme that's got, like a black background that fades to purple on the bottom. And then it's got my logo at the top and the bottom. And you can even use animated GIFs. My wife made one that had like a cute little cat that would run across the logo. Like, you can do that because we want you to do that. Again, we want you to build your brand, whatever that may be. And then once you apply it to your pen name, boom, instantly every page you create on BookFunnel against that pen name, they're all branded the same. So that no matter where they end up, if it's going to be downloading in Reader Magnet or an audiobook, or if they're going through your sales or something else like that, it's all going to look like your branding and your theme.
That's so cool. I will admit, I did not know you could do that on BookFunnel.
Most people don't. And you would be forgiven for that because we're not very good at telling people about that stuff. We've gotten a lot better. As our team has gotten larger, we have more bandwidth. So now we have an amazing author support team. We have our own podcast. I'm not pitching it here, but like we have our own podcast. We do monthly webinars and orientations. And now we do a lot more where we will actually pick features of BookFunnel that we feel like people don't know enough about. And we'll do a whole webinar on like, cool, let's show you how to do a themed page. Let's show you how to create an author theme, how to set it on your pen name so that all of your pages look, the same, look uniform across the entire system.
And do you have one feature that this might be a hard question, that you're especially proud of? Like maybe one where you're like, okay, that was a really great idea.
So I'll start. We built direct sales integrations back in 2017. So this is just basically where you can go and sell on a Shopify store, all kinds of places. But you can go and sell whatever that you're going to sell, and then it connects to BookFunnel, and BookFunnel can deliver the ebooks and audiobooks. That's really cool. Two features that I built into that I really loved that I thought were super cool. One was pre-order. So you can actually sell directly from your website. BookFunnel will collect all of the email addresses, but we won't deliver until you say. You can set a specific date and you can say, okay, on this date, I want all the pre-orders to go out, and then everybody just comes in and buys. And then as soon as the pre-order delivers, it immediately flips. And now anybody who buys it after the fact just gets the book automatically, right? So there's sort of a cutoff date. That one was really cool. But my favorite is actually that when you build a sales delivery on BookFunnel, you can put as many books as you want into a single delivery, right? So the way that BookFunnel works is we don't actually care what it is you're selling on the other side. We just deliver what you tell us to deliver when we get the transaction. So as an example, if you sold tote bags, or you sell cool bookmarks on your author website, but the offer is, hey, buy any of my swag and get a free short story. BookFunnel, like, great, you send them a coffee mug, we'll send them the short story, right? We just connect those two things together and deliver it. The other thing that we build, the one that I really like, is that when you build the delivery on BookFunnel, that can be any number of things, right? So as an example, on my website, I have this great bundle where you can buy my entire 10-book audiobook box set, right? Except that when you sell that on your website and it hits BookFunnel, what you don't want to do is deliver an audiobook that is one book that has 10 audiobooks in it. First of all, it's gigantic. It's huge. Also, they only get one book cover. right? They sometimes you can do the the 3D box set looking cover to try to make it look like a bundle, but they can't see all 10 of your awesome, beautiful book covers that you built for specifically for your audiobook collection. So the way that we did it was like, you don't have to do that. When you sell that item over there, it hits BookFunnel and you tell BookFunnel, hey, when I sell that item, I want to deliver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, these 10 audiobooks. And that's great because when the reader goes to their library, they have all 10 books. Because believe it or not, if you sell them on your website and you tell them that there's 10 audiobooks in here or 10 ebooks even, we would see this more with ebooks. If you say there's 10 ebooks and then they go and there's one, you will immediately get an email, or more likely we will get the email that says, I paid for 10 ebooks and I only got one. We're like, well, no, but if you open that one up and then you open up the chapters, you can see there are 10 books in it. Yeah, but there's only one book here. I understand that, but there are actually 10 books inside that one book. Yeah, I'm only seeing one book. So like that's actually where the problem came from when we started doing this. And then, of course, authors would have to go through and actually make this big ebook box set, right? And tools like Vellum and Atticus have made that a lot easier. But you still have to like chunk, and sort of chunk them all together into this gigantic file, which may not work, right? If the file gets too big, you can't email it around, which is how a lot of people send books to Kindle. It becomes a lot harder and unwieldy to deal with those larger files. So our answer to this was, no, you just tell us what you want to deliver when you sell a product, and we will deliver whatever that is. That also lets you do things like, hey, here's a great bundle. Here's 3 ebooks and 3 audiobooks all together in the same bundle. And then when it hits us, we just deliver all 6 to your library.
That's really cool. And you've mentioned a lot of really cool features that have been really successful, but I'm going to be difficult with you and ask, are there any features that you guys have created that just didn't get executed as you anticipated, or just you thought it was really cool and authors were like, nah, we don't need this?
So a few years back, a couple of years into the whole process, BookFunnel doesn't really have a free trial. Right. We have a really, really low level first time account that's only $20 a year. Part of that is because I don't want to deal with spammers. And if anytime you have free trials, that's a really hard thing. And you end up playing this cat and mouse game where they just keep signing up for free trials and stuff like that. So, in order to sign up for BookFunnel, you have to sign up with a credit card. We have to have a valid thing on file. But that makes it hard for people to kind of try us out sometimes. And so a few years in, we came up with this idea of giving our existing authors a token so that they could give that token to somebody else. That person could upload their reader magnet and use that token just for their one reader magnet so they could experience BookFunnel's delivery. They could even join promos and do stuff with it. It was a cool idea. Like, I thought it was a cool way to let people experience BookFunnel without having to without openly having just a free sign up where everybody could sign up and then spam our system. In practice, it didn't end up working out so well because now we're dealing with people who aren't even our customers, who are coming to us with problems and saying, well, this isn't working and that's not working. And I have a suggestion for everybody's suggestion about how you can fix your stuff. And I'm like, you don't even pay me. So, we quietly decommissioned that feature after a couple of years. We were like, yeah, a few people were still using it at the time, but it had kind of dwindled down. And we were like, that was a great idea in theory. It didn't work out so well. So I think that's probably the only thing we ever actually removed from BookFunnel, where we put a feature in and then we took it back out. Most of the features that we have, we really have, they've been successful from the start. And then we try to iterate and optimize and make them better when we look at how authors and readers are actually using them. Print codes is a great example of one that was just like, it started super small. It started from a group of romance authors who were like, hey, we're going to this big romance con. And the last couple that we've gone to, the problem is readers come through, they get a bunch of books. We give out free books, right? So they would just hand out like free paperbacks. And then come to find out that their readers were just leaving stacks of paperbacks in their hotel rooms because the airlines will only let you take 50 pounds. And after a while, they're like, well, these are the books I really want. And the rest of them, these look like great books, but I can't take them with me, right? I don't have enough room. And I'm not going to pay $175 or whatever stupid thing the airlines charge to have a 60-pound bag. And so the books that they were giving away were just being tossed. And then a lot of the readers were like, well, do you have ebooks? Like, I'll just go read your ebook. And so we were like, oh, I think we can do that. We have like 80% of the tech to do what you want to do. We just need to go just a little bit further. So we added print codes to that. And then over the years, we've just been like, oh, here's a cool way we could make that better. What about newsletter signups? When they go to redeem their print code, you got a little checkbox that says, hey, if you'd like to hear from this author and hear when they have great new stuff available, click here and join their mailing list. Direct integration with mailing lists like MailerLite and MailChimp, and being able to send all of that data out so that authors don't have to take any extra steps. We're pretty good at releasing a 1.0 that is valuable and that people love, and then watching how authors interact with it and how they use it and go, hey, our thing is like, if people, as a software designer, if people are always working around your stuff the way that you've designed it, you've probably done it wrong, right? If you go on Facebook and people are like, oh yeah, you don't want to use that way, here's how I do it, and then you find out that everybody's doing it that way and they're basically just going around what you built, then you probably should change what you built, because that's how people expect to use it. So we haven't had, I think tokens was the only sign up tokens was the only feature that we ever had where we were just quietly took it off the dashboard and don't have it anymore.
Now, Rachel and I have both used BookFunnel before as readers. A lot of the time for these podcast interviews where we get to read authors' books ahead of time. Can you tell us or our listeners a little bit about how BookFunnel works with platforms like Kobo to make that integration really seamless for people to download those books?
Sure. So like we talked about earlier, like we test all the devices, right? And then in the case of Kobo, so Kobo e-readers are super popular, right? We see a lot of those come through our system as e-readers. We're all Kobo fans at BookFunnel. I have Kobo e-readers. And so we wanted to make that process as seamless as possible. I'll tell you a funny story. So Kobo readers, the e-readers, have a web browser built into them. A lot of people don't know that. So honestly, like the biggest part of our job when a reader comes to BookFunnel for the first time, right? What ends up happening is over the last 10 years, we have millions of readers who've all been through our process. And so they're like, oh, BookFunnel, great. I know how to get a book. I use BookFunnel all the time. With Kobo, a lot of it is just education. So you go to BookFunnel, you land on a page, and let's say I'm just giving you a free short story. So the first thing BookFunnel asks is, what are you reading on? Oh, I read on a Kobo. Great. Do you read in the Kobo app on your iPhone, or are you talking about an e-reader? No, I have an e-reader. And then we really just show them how to go to their browser, how to get to the browser on their Kobo, and then type in this little short link. We have a little short link. And then once they type it in, they just tap the book cover, it downloads it, puts it right on their Kobo, and they're reading within seconds. It's super simple, right? But some years back, the Kobo developers broke that on one of the Kobo e-readers. In fairness to their developers, because they didn't know that it did that. So they knew there was a browser there. What they didn't know, because I emailed back and forth with the Kobo devs, and they were super responsive, and it's great. Like, we've always had a wonderful working relationship with Kobo. I will say, like, we've never talked to Amazon. Like, no one over there wants to talk to us, right? So we consider Kobo like a wonderful partner in indie publishing. So I reached out to the developers. So on the browser, you can tap, and if it's an EPUB, Kobo, the reader will just download it, put it on your Kobo, and even add it to your library in your home screen, and you can tap it and start reading. It's like any other book, right? The developers who broke it didn't know that it did that, because when I emailed them and told them that they broke that, they were like, no, you can't download an EPUB. I'm like, no, you could before you broke it. And I sent them a video showing them, because I had one of the older Kobos that hadn't been updated to that newer version. And the response was, interesting. And then they fixed it and it was fine. But like, that's a lot of what we are doing at BookFunnel, is just teaching. And then once we've shown a reader like how you get books onto a Kobo, then they can just zip away and do that. The other thing now that we teach them, it's not built directly into our process, but Kobo e-readers integrate directly with both Dropbox and Google Drive. So if you integrate your Kobo with your Dropbox, and then I do that personally, because anytime I can, I try to buy from authors directly. So if they have their books available on their website, I'll try to buy directly from them. If not, I do all my book shopping on Kobo. But any books that I sideload, I just go and I drag it, and from on my Mac, I just drag it and drop it into that Dropbox folder. The next time I pick up my Kobo, it's there. It syncs with my Dropbox. So that's another one where we educate, right? In the case of Kobo integration, it's really just showing them, hey, just click over here and tap here, and boom, you have your book and you'll be reading. Other devices, not so easy, right? Like, not to talk about competitors, but Nooks, there's really no way to get a book to a Nook without plugging it into a computer with a USB cable, which is the absolute worst way that you want to try as the people doing the email support, trying to help somebody get a book to a device. But we try as hard as we can. BookFunnel tries to be completely platform agnostic and help readers no matter what device they have in their hand. It's why we buy so many of these devices when they come out, so that if a reader comes to us and they say, that's not what my Kobo looks like, right? I have the Kobo Clara HD, and then we go, okay, let me go find my HD and plug it in and charge it up, because I probably haven't charged it in 6 months, but I'll plug it in and I'll turn it on and I update it to the version they're on. And then I tap where we're supposed to tap and I go, oh, they're right. They changed the wording of it, and let's go fix BookFunnel and tell it. So now we detect the device they're on and go, oh, I see you're on a Clara. Here's the instructions that you need, right? It's a lot of it is just education. Although we have been, we are actively working with Kobo to even make that integration easier. Now that Kobo integrates with Dropbox and with Google Drive and is actively working to sort of partner with other companies to make that easier for readers to get books onto their devices. We're really excited about hopefully being able to do something like that, where a reader might get a book from BookFunnel and we just go, yep, we just stuck it on your Kobo. It's ready to go.
I'm also a really big fan of the Google Drive integration, I will say. Use it all the time. But like you've mentioned, you work with, or BookFunnel works with so many different publishing platforms and ebook retailers. And so like you're a huge tool in the toolbox of wide indie authors. And I'm so curious, from your perspective, why do you think publishing wide is such an important strategy?
So my kids have a Kindle Unlimited account, right? We gave them that because I wanted them to have the agency to search for and find books that they wanted to read, right? They were like, it was a nightly, my kids are readers. And so there was a nightly, like, Dad, can you buy me this book? Dad, can you buy me this book? Dad, can you buy me this book? And so I gave them to that. And that's been great. And they use it a lot. But they've slowly, it's kind of dwindled. And part of the problem is eventually there's so much stuff that's coming out that comes into KU that they weren't able to find really the good books that they were looking for. But the bigger problem that I had, right? So I'm a lifelong reader. Since I was a kid, since you go to the library and actually go to libraries and pick up books, physical books. Or go to the bookstore and spend the last $6 that a kid had to buy a paperback because that was all I could afford. Here's the problem. I go to my son and I was like, hey, I see he's reading. And I say, hey, what are you reading? He's like, oh, it's this cool book and, whatever, science fiction, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it sounds really good. Who's the author? I don't know. You don't know? How many books are in the series? Oh, this is book 8 in the series. You're on the 8th book in the series. You don't know the author's name? Nah. Right? And that was an alarm bell for me, because that's a real problem. I can tell you the names of every author I love. And in fact, if I couldn't, that would worry me, because that means that I don't actually care who's writing the books. And so the reason I think that publishing wide, it's not really just about publishing wide, although it is, to me, having your books available everywhere means that you are having them, they are available to wherever readers can find you. Right? BookFunnel's philosophy when we first built it, and it's still our philosophy today, is meet the readers where they are. When we started BookFunnel, if they have a Kobo, we want to help them get it to the Kobo. If they have a Nook, we want to, even though they got to plug a USB cable in, we want to help them get it to the Nook. I don't want to try to force you to read on my platform. I want to go where you already are, because the more friction we can reduce, the more likely they are to read and discover great authors and then go on and read their books. And so what is important to me, and what I have been sort of preaching, if you come to any of my talks, and if you catch me live, I'll be at NINC in September, and I'll be Author Nation in November with the whole team again. If you come and listen to any of my talks, what you'll hear me preach is indie authors have the harder job today of getting, you think that the initial job is to get readers to notice you. And that is your first piece, right? To get them to find your books in the first place, which has gotten harder as there are more and more books available. But especially, I think, as, I'm a technologist. I wouldn't say I'm high futuristic, but I keep up with tech. As AI proliferates, and we don't need to get into the AI debate, but just know that it's here and it's not going away. But as AI proliferates, it is going to be more and more and more important as an author to distinguish yourself from other books and find those readers who love your books because they love your writing. And that's going to mean being in front of readers who, what's the polite way to say this, who pay for books, who buy books, right? And while I think that Kindle Unlimited and subscription platforms, and I know Kobo Plus has one, Kobo has Kobo Plus, I think subscription platforms are fantastic for people who don't have a lot of income and want and consume a lot of books. I mean, I have a Netflix account. We watch all kinds of stuff on it, right? I have Crunchyroll. My kids and I watch tons of anime. I think that those subscription services, they work really, really well. But ultimately, like if you could get your book in front of somebody who is willing to give you a shot because your book is free versus somebody who paid $5 to give your book a try, which one do you think is more likely to be a long-term reader, right? Who is going to, at the end of the book, and go, hey, that was pretty good. I mean, if I read multiples of your books, it's a really good chance you're already on my list as a favorite author, right? We call it, at BookFunnel, we just call it the reader journey. They don't know who you are. Like step one is they don't know who you are. Congratulations, like 8 billion people on the planet who've never heard of you. So there's a lot of upside. The second one is they've read one of your books, and that's great. But I've read plenty of books where I read one book and then either didn't go on to read more by that author or was just like, oh, that was cool, and then moved on with my life. Typically, once you're 2-3 books into a series, to an author, you start to become a fan. And then ultimately, what we want to get you to in the end is we want a super fan, right? Somebody who's going to back all your Kickstarters, somebody who is going to buy those super special edition leather-bound things that you're putting out, because that's really where you start to make more of the money, right? Unless you can put out a book every month until you die, you are the likelihood that you're going to stay on top and that you're going to have a long-term career as an author is selling, $4.99 ebooks is very unlikely, especially if you're a one book a year kind of author, right? But if you can get readers to pay more, to buy those special editions, to back your Kickstarters, to buy your audiobooks, to move into some of those higher priced items. Look, my wife is a huge reader as well. The authors that she loves, she buys their T-shirts. She buys coffee mugs with their little quotes and sayings on them. Like, those are the fans that you want. My experience, and this is just anecdata, my experience with the subscription platforms is you do get a lot of those readers who are just looking for an experience, right? They love cozy mysteries. And so they just go down the list and they just grab the next cozy mystery and they finish that one and go, that was fun. And then they grab the next one, they grab the next one, they grab the next one. And those can be great readers, right? They read lots and lots of books. But they also have no idea who you are because you were just the next one on the pile, and you gave them a fun experience, but they're not going to be the ones that come along later and care that you've got a new book out, right? Unless it shows up on their radar. They're certainly not going to care about your Kickstarter or that you've now got audiobooks or that you've started selling direct or any of the rest of those things, or you've got coffee mugs and tote bags and T-shirts, and like, they're not those readers. They're just going to read that book, which is great. You're going to make 82 cents on that book and then move on, right? So to me, publishing wide is really all about multiple streams of revenue, right? Even if they're small streams, lots of little small streams converge together into a big river. Not the big river company that we all know. And I'm not saying like you should absolutely be publishing on Amazon. They're the largest bookstore in the world. Don't be stupid. You absolutely should be publishing on Amazon. But I also think you should be publishing elsewhere. And if you are wide, you should be trying to, if you have a big backlist, you should set up a store and sell direct. You should be selling your audiobooks. You should sell all formats. You should be doing signed paperback copies. You should be running Kickstarters, like all of these things. And I say this knowing that everybody hears this and then it completely melts because there's a million things as indie authors we all should be doing. But the truth is like you do them one at a time. A lot of these things, you build up the machine. So it might take you, if you decide you want to do your own bookstore, you want to sell direct, or you're coming out of Kindle Unlimited and you decide you are going to publish wide. Yeah, if you've got a big backlist, it's going to take you a little while to upload all those to Kobo and upload them to Google Play and upload them to Apple. It's going to take a little time. But once they're there, you don't have to keep babysitting them. They just sort of keep churning. and you have to keep working on them, and we all have to learn new things, and that sucks. I can tell you when I published in 2011, there was like this much you could learn. Like there was, do this, and make money, and then push a button and then just make money. It's not like that anymore. We're now, the Kindle was released in 2009, right? And that really sort of spurred the indie publishing movement. So we're 16 years into this whole thing. And there's so much more to know and learn now than if you had started back when I started in 2011. I mean, back then there was just like keyboards, and you went on there and it was just, you're like, I did this and it worked, and I did this and it didn't work. And that was all there was to learn, right? Now there's so much more. And it means that it's harder if you're a new author just coming in today, right? You've just written your first book and you're ready to just jump into indie publishing. It feels like there's a million things that you have to learn. So I will tell you, there are a million things you have to learn. However, you only have to learn them one step at a time. And as you get those things done, that's knowledge built. And then it's not like, oh, I had to learn that, and then you have to relearn it again. Once you learn a skill and you start doing it, then you just move on and you take on the next thing.
And you've kind of segued into my next question, which is, because you've been publishing or like in the industry for so long, since 2011, there's been, like you said, a lot of changes in the industry. And how would you say those changes have affected BookFunnel and what you work on as a company?
Well, we've been growing like crazy. So we've been growing every single year since we opened. And that is because more people get into self-publishing, right? I self-published a book in 2011 because I had been, so I played Dungeons and Dragons, right? I'm just flying my geek flag. I have played my entire life. And so I am what we call the forever dungeon master in my group, which means that I have been the dungeon master for my group for about 35 years. And which means that I have been a storyteller my whole life, because that's what you do. Dungeon masters, like, they say, oh, this happened, and then the goblins attacked, and what are you guys going to do, right? You're telling stories. And there was always this secret little dream that I had that's like, well, maybe I could be a writer one day. But for me, at least, the thought of, if you go and you read, even back in the day, and now it's even harder, but if you learned about how traditional publishing worked, and it was like, oh, you write this book, and then you spend like 10 years trying and praying that someone might take it. And that's not who I am, right? That's not, one of the things that I've always loved about being a software engineer was, if I had an idea, I sat down at my computer and I tried it and I made it and I built it myself, and I could build this cool thing. I didn't need anybody's permission. I didn't need anybody's help. I could just go out and build a thing, and it was awesome, right? It's been like that since I was 7. So when I found that indie publishing existed, that little secret dream in the back of my head was like, oh, why not me? I think I could write a good story. And so I did. I published my first book because I thought I could write a good story. In the intervening years, a lot more people have discovered that in the same way that I did, right? I discovered it because I read a self-published book. I didn't know it was self-published, because you don't have to like put some big, huge banner on the book cover that says self-published. I read a book and it was awesome. It was just a great book. And I got to the end of the book and I'm reading the author's note, and it's like, oh, thank you, and I went, holy crap, he just put this out there into the world? Like, you can do that? And that is what spurred my interest in doing that. And I still see that today at conferences when authors come up to me. That is what I hear, is those authors who said, why, I think I could tell a good story. Why not me? And so, the biggest way that it's affected BookFunnel is in our growth. We continue to grow because we continue to see more self-published authors coming in with amazing books, right? Most of the books that I read these days are indie published, not because traditional publishing isn't there. I still have authors that I love that I've read for 30 years. But indies are out there doing really cool stuff. And if we're being completely honest, publishing way faster than traditional publishing. Like, there's nothing that irks me more than one of my self-publishing authors going trad, because then that means instead of 4 books a year, I'm going to get 1. It's so annoying, right? I know you can write 4 books a year. I saw you do it. And now I get 1, because that's all traditional publishing does, right? It's like, no, we're going to do 1 book this year, and just 1. And so like that bugs me as a reader because, of course, I always want more books from the authors that I love. But in terms of like the changes, everything we build at BookFunnel is driven by our authors. And so our authors email us and they say, hey, can BookFunnel do this? And we go, no, but that's a great idea. And every feature that we've built in the 10 years that we've been building stuff, they came directly from our authors. Again, like the store print codes came from a group of romance authors who were like, it'd be great if we could do this. And we went, you know what? It would be great if you could do that. Let me go see if we can do that. And we went off and did that. Certified mail, we had authors that wanted to deliver very early on. That was the first feature that we really built at BookFunnel after we built the download delivery, right? Which was initially all we did. Certified mail was authors going, hey, I want to send out advanced review copies, but I don't want to just have a free download that anybody can get. I want to make sure that it only goes to certain people, and I want to make sure that they're secure and they're watermarking and blah, 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 blah. And we were like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. We can build that. So, in the 10 years as the indie publishing movement and industry has built up, we have continued to grow because we continue to listen to the authors. We try to see what trends are happening so that when authors are ready to do something amazing, we're already there with the tech, right? So there's, the Gretzky quote, skating to where the puck is going to be, right? And that's hard because sometimes you miss the mark. In general, we've had a pretty good run of, 5 years ago when audiobooks have been blowing up for 10 years, but 5 years ago when it really started to take off in the indie publishing sphere, we went, we should, everybody'd been asking us for years. We're like, we don't do audiobooks. It's a much bigger beast than, like ebooks are like 2 megabytes. Audiobooks are like 2 gigabytes. And that's like orders of magnitude larger. And so, but 5 years ago, we were like, hey man, this audiobook thing is really kind of blowing up. Maybe we should build that. And then we went off and did. And it took a good long while for us to build it because it was nothing like what we had already built in the ebook space. And yet when we did build audiobooks, we made it so that everything you could already use with BookFunnel and an ebook, you could now do with audiobooks. You want to send out advanced reader copies of your audiobooks? Great. You want to do print codes with audiobooks? Great. You want to do direct sales with audiobooks? Great. We built it so that the day that we launched audiobooks, every existing feature on BookFunnel could already work with everything that you wanted to do in ebooks and audiobooks. Everything we already did with ebooks, you could now do with audiobooks. And so we just sort of continue to grow as the industry grows and changes. And it's worked out really well for us. And it's exciting. It's fun to keep working on it. I love seeing how much the industry is changing and where indie authors are going. It's really kind of funny to watch the traditional publishers lagging like years behind and then all of a sudden like running up behind the indies because they're like, wait, what are y'all doing? That sounds like a good idea. And they start, running after the indies because they've been doing it for years, right?
Do you have any predictions for where the industry is heading over the next 5 years?
So I gave this talk at NINC last year, and I kind of talked in the very beginning as sort of state of the industry. And what I talked about was the iPod came out in 2001. Right. And there were other little MP3 players before that. And somebody's going to go be like, oh, it was not the first one. I know it's not the first one, but it was the first one that really took off in the public consciousness. And from 2001 to 2007, when the iPhone came out, was released in 2007, the entire music industry changed and shook up. Now that we have the iPhone and we have the Spotify's and the Amazon Musics and the Apple Musics and the subscription services of the world, authors generally don't make, musical artists generally don't make money on music anymore, right? Unless you are Taylor Swift, and if you're listening to this, Taylor, give me a call. Unless you're Taylor, I'm a huge Swiftie. I'm wearing my 1989 t-shirt. You probably can't see it over my microphone. But unless you are the biggest, basically the top 0.001% of artists in the world, Spotify pays you nothing. And so that is not how artists are going to make money anymore. It's not going to be through digital distribution. And that really started with the iPod when Steve Jobs broke up the sort of record label hegemony and made it so that that listeners could just buy one song for 99 cents, which is one of those careful what you wish for kind of things, right? It's what consumers wanted. I just wanted that one song. I don't want the whole album. I just want the hit. But what that did was that made it impossible for artists to sell you an album that previously they could have sold you on CD for $12.99, and now they get some tiny piece of 99 cents. Then subscriptions came along and they got an even tinier piece of 0.001% of a cent, So what I see, I think that the ebook publishing didn't come along really until 2007. And so I think we're about 6 years behind where the music industry is, but that's ultimately where we're going. At least as more of the platforms like Spotify, Spotify's moved into audiobooks, and everybody's like, yay, they're going to save us from Audible. And I'm like, that's your savior? I don't know, guys. Maybe look at what they did to the music artists and maybe don't cheer so much, right? I think the biggest thing that's going to change is it's going to be ever more important for authors to really distinguish themselves, not just from other authors, but from, like I said, from AIs. We're not far off from companies just cranking out books with AI. And that's fine. Some readers may consume those books and be perfectly happy with that, right? But there are still readers out there who are like, no, I want a real human. I want to read their books. I want to know their stories, right? So I think the biggest change over the next 5 years is going to be that authors are going to have to work harder to make sure that they need to brand themselves. And so it's not so much about selling one book or even a series. It's about selling you as the author. The authors that I love, I mean, like we talk about super fans, I don't care, right? Tell me whatever you're writing, I'll buy it, right? Brandon Sanderson did a Kickstarter and his was huge. But the thing that it's not the amount of money. Everybody talks about the money that Sanderson made, which was like $42 million, which is not nothing, right? We should talk about it. But the thing that I actually loved was Brandon Sanderson did a Kickstarter where he said, hey, everybody, I wrote 4 books. I'm not going to tell you the titles. I'm not going to tell you the characters. I'm not going to tell you what they're about, but I wrote them. And if you give me money, you can have them. And super fans like me were like, shut up and take my money, right? I bought 4 Sanderson. I have no idea. I mean, I have them now because he published them all over a year. I bought the leather bound, beautiful editions. They're sitting on my shelves and they're amazing, right? That is what we as authors want to get to, right? If you go look at the authors that are out there doing Patreon, right? So like Matt Denneman, who writes Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is exploding right now, right? So you go and you can read the DCC books that are all out there, and he sold the print rights to a publisher who's now publishing them all on bookstore shelves. And yet, if you don't want to wait for the new book, if you join Matt's Patreon, you can read each chapter as he finishes them, right? And he has a lot of subscribers who are literally paying like $5, $10 a month because I don't want to wait for the new book to come out, right? And you're only able to do that by building a fandom who actually cares about you, the author, and not some individual book that they read. So I think the most important thing in the next 5 years for authors, at least, is figure out what your brand is. You write cozy mysteries, great. Why my cozies? Why these cozies over all of the other cozies that are out there in the world, over all of the AI generated cozies that are now coming out or that are going to be out there in the world in the next 5 years? Why yours? And figure out what that is that you offer. Do you offer a super smart heroine, right? So cozies generally have a female protagonist. Is your protagonist really smart, like a Sherlock Holmes kind of smart? But she lives in this super small town, and so she's forced to live with these really small town people. But she's just like super brilliant. What is it? Why do I want to read your books? Why, as an author, do I want to read your books? So figure that out, right? This is my message directly to authors. Find out what your author brand is, so that everything that you do falls under that brand. And when people read it, when I read a Brandon Sanderson book, I don't know the characters. I don't know the world. I mean, it's probably going to be in his Cosmere, but like the 4 books that he sold us on his Kickstarter, no idea. He said 3 of the 4 would be in the Cosmere, which is the universe that he's built that all of his books like nestle into. But I didn't know anything else. But what I did know was I'm going to get a Brandon Sanderson book, and it's going to be a great experience. I don't know anything else. I don't know who the characters are, but I love Brandon Sanderson, and I know I'm going to get a great Brandon Sanderson book. And that's because he's built a brand around himself. If I had only ever read his Mistborn books, which if you haven't read them, they're great and you like fantasy, go read Mistborn. It's a trilogy and it's great. If I had read Mistborn and then just sort of left it at that, I would not be a Brandon Sanderson superfan. I would have been like, oh, Mistborn, have you read that? That's a great series. Instead, I went on from those books and read other books that he had written and became a Sanderson fan, not a Mistborn fan.
I think it would have been really funny if Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter books had all just been paranormal romances and everybody was just absolutely floored by it. I think that was a missed opportunity. But you speak about the future of the publishing industry. Where do you see BookFunnel fitting in to help authors create this brand that you have mentioned?
So to circle back around, what I originally built BookFunnel for, which was just delivering my little reader magnet, which was a 25,000 word novella that I had written that was kind of a prequel to the series that I was publishing. All of that was about branding. What I wanted to do was, if you've read my books or if you're even thinking about reading my books, I want to get you onto my newsletter so that I can talk about me, so that I can talk directly to you, right? You can read my books and you may like them. But the thing that turns readers into super fans, that, back to Sanderson for just a second, but like if you look at, like, ask anybody who's met him at a conference, ask anybody who's watched his videos, and they'll tell, he's so nice. What a nice guy. I met him at a conference and he genuinely listened to me as I talked about, as I'm sure I just prattled on about his books, and he just listened and was so attentive, and I really felt like he cared. And that's a big part of his brand. If you watch any of his videos, he's a huge dork. I say that as a fellow dork. Like, that's a big part of his brand. And so when I built BookFunnel, it was like, hey, if I get you onto my newsletter, my brand is not really, you couldn't know more about me from reading my books other than the kinds of books that I like to write. But if I get you on my newsletter, I can talk about me. I can talk about, why do I write the books that I write? In my case, I tended to write more YA, sort of young adult fantasy, because that's like the time that I started reading. When I discovered fantasy, I was like 13 or 14 years old. And so there's some part of me that's still that kid that is stuck there in that time, reading those books in my bed and reading the Chronicles of Prydain and reading the Wizard of Earthsea, the Earthsea cycle. And like being in love with those, and some of those those were YA books, right? They had teenage protagonists that then, progress, what we call progression fantasy, and they get more powerful as they go on. Harry Potter starts off as a little weakling, but then he gets bigger and becomes a great wizard and all that sort of stuff. I wrote the books that spoke to me. And so, if I get you on my newsletter, I can talk about that, because that is a part of the brand. That's probably what you're going to get if you read more of my books. That's what you're going to find. And so BookFunnel plays a bigger part in that brand building, because there are so many things that you can do with BookFunnel, be it building an advanced team, right? So having a team of people, those are your biggest super fans right there. The people who leave at early reviews and want early copies and stuff. Selling direct, doing Kickstarters. We do delivery for lots of authors that do Kickstarters. If you're doing ebooks and audiobooks, we're probably delivering your Kickstarter. So, and then, like I said, I kind of mentioned earlier, BookFunnel's really not in the business of building our brand. I don't really care if readers know who BookFunnel is, other than that helps me get you in front of more authors. And that's really all that I care about. And so all the features that we build, we don't ever really think about how that's going to affect BookFunnel's brand. I mean, we're not going to do anything that poisons the brand. We think about it in the sense that we have a responsibility to create a brand that readers trust, because when they see that you are delivering your Kickstarter with BookFunnel, they go, oh, I know how to use that. I've used BookFunnel before. I know how to get my books, right? But other than that, we try to step out of the way so that you can build your author brand. And I talk about this in a lot of my talks, that's really what it's about, is building that author brand up.
Now, I know we've kept you for a while, but I did promise to take us off topic. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our favorite artist, Dr. Taylor Ellison Swift, who you have already brought up. Right. Now, when you give a lot of talks at conferences, I've seen you a couple times reference Taylor Swift. And I'm so curious if you can just let listeners know what they can learn as indie authors from the biggest music artist in the world.
So Taylor Swift self-publishes her music, right? And you wouldn't think that because she's the biggest artist in the world. And because she's the biggest artist in the world, she still has to rely on big distributors to get her music out there. But the most important part to me of self-publishing is she owns all of her IP. She owns all of her music. You know, we don't have to talk about the whole Taylor's versions and all of that sort of stuff. But the short version is everything she publishes now, ever since the Lover album, she owns every piece of it. And what that means is that, yes, she's, distributing it through whatever. I don't even know who, because this is a good point that I like to make. I don't care. Right? I read a lot of Tor books and Baen books because they publish sci-fi and fantasy. I never picked up a book because it had Tor on the spine. I'm like, ooh, I love that publisher. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about the publisher. They care about the authors, right? So I don't even know who's out there pressing CDs and cutting vinyls and doing all that for Taylor. None of that matters. What I care about is Taylor. She's out there self-publishing her music. And what's really fascinating is that she'd been doing that for years. Again, since the Lover album, which was 2018, I think 2018, 2019, because it hit right before COVID. And she's had Folklore, Evermore, Midnights, and then TTBD since then, right? So 4 albums, so 5 of her albums, and then all the Taylor's versions. It wasn't until Tortured Poets Department, which is her most recent album, it wasn't until that she set up her own Shopify store and started selling swag, right? T-shirts, hoodies. She has a song on Folklore called Cardigan, and so she started selling cardigans. Of different albums, right? So different colors and different sort of things. Everything she sells on her store that's not digital sells out in minutes. Minutes! You can't even find it. I know, because my wife is constantly trolling it, looking for it. I ended up writing her a script that polls every minute looking for new items and then texts her anytime anything new gets added to the store. And that's all self-published. And I can't even imagine what kind of machine she had to build. Like, cardigans, right? Like, that's not something you just pick up off the rack. She had to go and find somebody who could make cardigans for her and make them in the styles that she wanted. She does vinyls. All of her vinyls sell. Who even listens to vinyl? I own them all, but I don't listen to them, but I got them all. That to me is the pinnacle of super fandom, right? She has been, and look, like, there are people out there that listen to Taylor and are like, oh, she's nice. I like her music. It's nice. They're not the ones who are selling out her store the minute a new item becomes available. That's the super fans, right? But she has done an amazing job of building those super fans to the point now where if she literally decided that she was just going, you could only listen to my music by going to taylorswift.com and listening to it in a web browser, wouldn't matter. Like, if she pulled her music from every service in the world, all of her fans would be right over at taylorswift.com listening to all of their music, right? Because she took those fans who were like, oh, I like her music, and did all of these things. She's fall down. If you're a Swiftie and you fall down the rabbit hole of all these, like, she throws up signs and she does all these little things to just like turn her fans rabid, right? And maybe you can't do that. Maybe you're not the kind who's going to go on TikTok and drop these little videos that make your fans rabid, or maybe that you are. The great thing is that it all starts with your art, right? Nobody came to Taylor because they found her on Instagram first, and then we're like, oh, she has music? Like, you came to her music first and then became a Swiftie. The same thing applies to authors. They found your book, they read your book, and then what you want to try to do is get them to move from they read one of your books to becoming a fan to becoming a super fan. So I think the biggest lesson that anybody can learn is the reason that she is as big as that she is, the reason that she sells out 100,000 seat stadiums around the world is because she has built up this super fan base, and they go directly to her. Like, they know, every Swiftie knows that you watch her Instagram for drops, right? Directly from her, and you get on her newsletter and all that sort of stuff, right? You're not listening to whoever her publisher is, right? You're not on their mailing list. No, you go directly to her. And that is the important message for authors, is to get readers so that there is no one between you and the reader. And at the end of the day, that is the only two people in the relationship that matters. You write the books, they read the books. People like me, we're guys in the middle that are helping facilitate the transfer of the thing, in the same way that Taylor's got to have somebody who knits and then ships those cardigans. But really, it's down between her and her fans.
when you agreed to come on the podcast, I had told Tara that I was just going to ask you about Taylor Swift. So the fact that I managed to make this into one question, I think she's going to be proud. We are going to let you go.
You show great restraint.
Thank you so much. I agree. But before we let you go, we do have 2 more small questions for you.
2.
1, where can listeners learn more about BookFunnel?
BookFunnel.com. We're super clever.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then 2, just to close things out, what is your go-to karaoke song? Because those who have not been to NINC with you do not know how fantastic you are when given a microphone and some music. So what are your go-tos?
So a lot of it depends on the crowd. There are rules to karaoke, right? So like when I do karaoke with my friends at home, when we're just hanging out, I've written my own karaoke software, by the way. I'm serious. So I grew up in musical theater, right? So I'm very much like, we're into Broadway and musicals and stuff like that. But if I just walk in and I'm in a crowd of people and we're just going to sing, if I'm just starting out and it's like the first number of the night, I love to do Footloose, because then you can open up the whole song with "Let's Dance," and then everybody cheers and then you sing the song. I would say like my go-to songs. So I was a child of the Disney 90s, and so I have a whole slew of Disney songs that I can do. My go-to is probably "Sweet Transvestite" from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So I grew up in counterculture and stuff like that too, and so I was always hooked on super weird things like that. That's one of my favorites. Footloose I love to do just because it's fun. And then at NINC, every year, everyone asks me with my friend Annabelle Chase to sing Love Shack, because I can do the voice of the guy from the B-52s really well. And so that's always a fun one. So I'm a karaoke superhero, because I have the ability to remember almost every song I've ever heard if I've heard it more than a few times. And so if you grew up in a musical household like I did, my dad was a music producer. We always had music. So I know like songs that I shouldn't know because I was a kid and I would just always listen to music when we were in the car. And so you go and you play a song and I didn't even know the artists, right? As I got older, I'm like, I would start singing along and somebody would go, "How the hell do you know Neil Diamond? Is this Neil Diamond?" Well, I didn't know, but my mom was a huge Neil Diamond fan. And so what that lets me do, though, is when I do karaoke, I get people all the time that come up and go, "Hey, we want to do a song, can you do blah, blah, blah?" Absolutely, I can do that. I was at NINC and they were like, "Can you do One Night in Bangkok?" Yep. And then they come up and they're like, "Oh, they're people inside are taking a petition. They want you to do Summer Nights from Greece. Can you do Summer Nights?" Yep. Like I can remember all of those songs, and I don't even really need the lyrics on the screen for most of them. So yeah, those are my go-tos though.
A great way to wrap up the podcast.
Well, we said we were going to go off on some tangents, and I know we
did. Very essential tangents though.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us, Damon. I think we had some really good insights here, and I think authors are going to learn a lot about BookFunnel and the industry in general. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in learning more about BookFunnel, we will include links in our show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us at KoboWritingLife.com. Be sure to follow us on social media. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads.
This episode was hosted by Laura Granger and Rachel Wharton, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robothon. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and a huge thanks to Damon for being our guest today. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.